Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting, the first meeting of 2023. Start off with apologies for absence and substitutions, please. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just tried to contact Councillor Lawrence, who, as far as I'm aware, is due to be here this evening, but otherwise we're all present and correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, all present. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Second item on the agenda is to approve the correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November 2022, which you'll find on pages 5 to 19. Could see, if somebody like to move those? Thank you. And second, thank you. All those in favour that this shows a true record, please show. And against and abstentions. Okay, that is approved as a true record. Next item on the agenda is the Planning Committee protocol, pages 21 to 23. I'm sure you've all read this and inwardly digested it many times. Fourth item on the agenda, our third item, is declarations of interest. I will declare a collective non-pecuniary interest on behalf of the committee for agenda item 7, application number 2022-1114, and item 8, application 2022/1115, because the council is the applicant on both matters. Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the general declaration of interest on the same items 7 and 8, I'll declare a private non-pecuniary interest because I took the decision, I was part of taking the decision to install the CCTV, so I'll take no part in the discussions.
Thank you. And Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest for item 7 and item 8 on the basis that the land is owned by Nottinghamshire County Council, and both myself and Councillor Barnfather are county councillors at Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Not a declaration of interest, but just an update on Councillor Lawrence. He's delayed by public transport delays, but is on his way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Apologises for his lateness.
Any more declarations of interest? No. Right, we pass on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 4, application number 2021/1398, the land at Grangeview Road, Gedling, which you'll find on page 26 of your agenda papers. It's the erection of 24 dwellings, associated parking and access road. Would anybody like to move that item on the agenda? Thank you very much. And second it. We do have a seconder? Nobody?
We should have the speaker. The speaker should speak first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I've just been reminded that we do have a speaker on this item, which is Mr. Philip Ollie of the Willow Farm Action Group. So would Mr. Ollie like to take the stand, as they say, and address the committee? You've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. The layout of the houses on the southern edge of the development will result in significant harm to the residential amenity currently enjoyed by existing residents who live adjacent to the site boundary. The lower southern edge of the site is 5 metres higher than the ground level of those existing Grange Crescent homes that are adjacent to the development. A key development principle within the Willow Farm development brief is that the developer should seek to minimise the impact on existing homes situated immediately adjacent to the site boundary in terms of a loss of light, privacy, visual amenity, and the other areas of residential amenity. We see little evidence in this application that this has been considered. Indeed, far from minimising the impact on existing homes, the applicant's intention to construct 2-storey houses on elevated terraces along the already higher ground of the southern edge will only serve to maximise the negative impact of this development on neighbouring residents. The height, bulk, and the position of these new houses will dominate neighbouring properties and will result in the occupants having close-up views into the rear rooms and gardens of the existing homes. This will undermine the existing residential environment because the changes brought about by the applicant's design would be materially different to that currently enjoyed by existing residents in terms of privacy and outlook, and this will be significantly harmful to the living conditions of neighbouring residents. The owners of one of these homes purchased their house in 1969, and the impact of the applicant's plan, will be devastating. It was always known that the topography of this site would present significant challenges to a developer, and we supported the Borough Council's decision to include within the Willow Farm development brief a requirement that the development would have to be designed having regard to a landscape and visual impact assessment. This assessment has not been undertaken, and we do not accept the reasons given for not doing so. A landscape and visual impact assessment focuses on the effects that the proposed development will have on the landscape, and also, most importantly, the visual effects for neighbours and the general public. We find it extremely concerning that your committee has been deprived of this essential source of information, despite the fact that a visual impact assessment would have focused on a number of the issues raised in objection to this development. We dispute any suggestion that a topographical survey can be used as a replacement source of information. We therefore respectfully ask that you consider delaying your decision to allow this specialist assessment to be completed. Thank you very much for allowing me to address you this evening. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to ask Nigel Bryan, Principal Planning Officer, to outline the application.
Thank you, Chairman. As you can see, the application site's outlined in red and the plan in front of you. This just shows an aerial view of it. And this just shows the larger allocated site. The parcel of land that's under consideration is this parcel here. And then this is the large allocated site that may well come forward at a later date, but it's only this parcel where the 24 dwellings are proposed to be erected. By way of an update, it's also recommended an additional condition be added in respect of a further protected species survey from mature ash tree that's proposed to be removed to the site entrance. I'll just read the condition. Prior to the commencement of development, a protected species survey shall be completed in respect to the possible bat roots for the ash tree to the site entrance, which is intended to be removed. The survey shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and any mitigation approved in the report shall be undertaken. The larger allocated site is identified for 110 dwellings, whereas the proposed applications for the 24. This is the proposed site layout. You'll see in a minute from the street scenes that the units to the north are proposed to be 2.5 stories in scale, and some of the units here also, whereas these units are all proposed to be 2 stories in scale. There was a significant change of levels through the application site. And these are the proposed street scenes. So it's the 2-story that will be adjacent to the units on Grangeview Road, and these will be the units to the north. And this just shows really the significance of some of the change in levels. So this elevation is the 3 units towards the end, and here you'll get an appreciation of the change in levels between the application site and the units to the south here. In terms of the window-to-window distances between the units, the main rear elevation here to the nearest units on here will be in the region of 23 metres. And then in terms of that impact on the residential amenity, we consider that 23 metres is an acceptable distance, notwithstanding the change in levels. And then the other key thing to be of note is that in terms of the meeting the full policy compliance in terms of contributions, so be 5 affordable units, which will be these units in this location here, 3 of which will be first homes and 2 affordable rent. There'll be 15,000 contribution towards bus stop improvements, 131,000 towards education, 12,000 towards the maintenance of public open space, a monitoring fee and a local labour agreement. Since the publication of the committee report, a number of emails have been received from the Willow Farm Action Group and local residents expressing concern about the application and committee report in particular. These concerns primarily relate to the loss of a tree to the site entrance, whether or not the impact on protected species have been explored, including on hedgerows, and whether a landscape and visual impact assessment is required to be submitted in support of the application. And also whether impacts on neighbours and amenities have been suitably assessed, including whether neighbour letters have been appropriately summarised. These are addressed in turn. As previously mentioned, an additional condition is requested in respect of protected species for the ash tree that's going to be to the site, removed from the site entrance. The layout indicates existing hedgerows will be retained, and this is shown on the proposed drawings, and a landscaping scheme secured through condition 4. In terms of the Willow Farm development brief, paragraph 4.9 does indicate that development will need to be designed having regard to a landscape and visual impact assessment. An LVIA has been requested, however no such survey has been submitted. Notwithstanding this point, it is considered there is enough information to determine the application. Sections have been submitted showing the closer relationship between existing and proposed dwellings. And furthermore, the site only comprises a small part of the allocated site, which is not as high or prominent as the remainder. I'll just show you a couple of pictures for some long-range views as well. So this is the view of the site access. And this is a view that you would see of the site from the top of Arnold Lane and Jessop's. The actual application site is this strip in here. It doesn't include the land to the immediate north, so it would just be this strip here. The land to the right is the larger allocated site, but that's not under consideration under this application. And this view is from just off Burlington Road to the West Air Lane East, and the application site again is in that location between the hedgerows, and to the right of the church spire is where the larger allocated site may well come forward. But this is the parcel of land for the 24 units below that, the ridge line in there. So we do believe there is enough information for members to determine the application in the absence of an LVIA. In respect of neighbour comments, these have been summarised in the committee report, as have those from statutory consultees. It's considered the impacts on residential community has been accurately summarised and covered in the officer report in paragraph 6.5, and the comments from neighbours covered in appropriate detail. Concern has been expressed about the Human Rights Act, and whilst recent case law establishes the act is important, it should not be assumed that it would outweigh the importance of having a coherent control over the town and country planning. In summary, the site is allocated for residential development, and therefore the principle of development is supported. The layout of design and the scheme has been designed around the main spine road, is considered to respect the character of the area. There is a significant change of levels in the area, but given the distances between proposed and existing properties, to consider the impact on residential community would be acceptable. The application would also return a full policy compliance scheme in respect of contributions. As a result, the application is recommended for approval, as outlined on pages 36 or 42, and subject to the previously mentioned condition. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Nigel. Right, there we have it, the application number 2021/1398, land at Grangeview Road, Gedling. The proposal is the erection of 24 dwellings, associated parking and access road. Would somebody like to move that application? Thank you, and second it. Thank you very much. Right, would anybody like to open the debate on this item? Councillor Barnfelder.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I do know this site quite well, because going all the way back to our original local plan and the aligned core strategy, I did visit the site at that time. And it's fair to say the argument about not including that piece of land, the extended piece of land, not just the application site before us today, was effectively lost when the plan was accepted. So I think we are quite clear that this is land that is designated for residential development within the local plan. It is no longer green belt land. whilst that is understood, I listened to the objector, to the resident today who has spoken against this application with, I think, a very simple and understandable and clear request. Not that we actually refuse this application before us today, but that we take greater time and deliberation and allow a visual impact assessment to be conducted. And having listened to the officer, it would appear that we may have requested the same ourselves, or perhaps expected to have the same ourselves, and that has not been forthcoming from the applicant, and that concerns me as why that has not occurred. The topography of the land is the topography of the land, and that can't be altered, and whatever properties are built on this particular application site will severely impact on the residents who live in existing properties. But I don't feel that we are being fair to them should we consider this application, determine it today in favour of the application without considering that visual impact assessment that's already been alluded to by the officer and by the speaker. There was a very simple request to defer this matter today. We're not talking about refusing it. And I move that we actually do defer this matter today. We go back to the applicant and we insist upon, as much as our right to do so, a visual impact assessment being produced so that this committee are fully informed of the impact of this development on existing properties and on the quality of life of the residents of those properties. You know, it may well be that at that initial point we should be considering bungalows, single level properties, and obviously as the properties move back further up the allocated sites, not just this site, they will no doubt increase in height. But whilst ever they are having this overbearing impact on existing residential developments, I think we should take greater time, greater consideration, and I move that we defer the application before us today.
Councillor Adams.
I'd just like to second that deferment, Chair, please.
Very okay. Well, is everybody quite... We're going to put this to the vote. Councillor Paling.
Before we go to that vote, can I just check whether the street section B to B and street section C to C are the equivalent of sight lines, the elevations that are the impact that's being talked about? Because that's going almost hardly any overlooking on that middle point. As far as I can see, it's going over the top of the houses, as in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses throughout Gedling.
This is just a view taken from the site, showing the view from the actual application site down as what you can see currently to the natural ground level. So really you can see the roofs and the upper floor windows, but it kind of highlights the change in levels between the application site and those immediate neighbours as it currently stands. And that's obviously the proposed sections.
And I'm sorry, but can I again check that there will be a back garden? Is that, I am right in that there is a back garden before the whole thing is seen? There's garden length there? Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a request for just a little more information. Can I ask what efforts were put into obtaining this report, given that it was in the initial documentation?
In effect, when we emailed the agent saying, this is the information required, he submitted the additional transport statement, but the LVIA wasn't forthcoming, so ultimately we have to make the judgment as to whether or not there's enough information to determine it as submitted or otherwise, but that's the gift of the planning committee at the moment.
Councillor Hope.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barnfather put my own thoughts about this rather well, but one, I don't know quite what the Willow Farm development brief is, but if it does include a requirement for a visual impact statement, then surely before we grant any planning permission, we should have one. And I agree with him. I don't think the residents are saying, no, it can't be developed. What they're saying is that they would like to see what the impact is going to be, and they'd like us to know what it was going to be before it was passed. And that to me seems wholly reasonable. And I think we'd be very remiss to sort of ignore the requirements of this Willow Park Farm development brief. Thank you.
If I could just add some further clarification in relation to the status of the Willow Farm development brief. It was adopted as informal planning guidance and not a supplementary planning document. There's no specific requirement in the local planning document for the landscape and visual impact assessment. A landscape and visual impact assessment was undertaken in advance of the allocation of the site in the local planning document, albeit it doesn't consider the specific merits of the development which is now proposed. The assessment that was undertaken prior to the adoption of the local planning document, it gives an overall medium visual sensitivity in relation to the site. That was considered by the appointed inspector prior to her report on the suitability of the local planning document. But I would just make the point again that the requirement is contained in informal guidance and not in the local planning document. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Councillor David Ellis.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask for some guidance from the legal officer, particularly, of the implications of deferring this decision while we're waiting for a visual impact statement?
Possible implications are that there could be a challenge for non-determination, and that's one of the potential outcomes. The reason for the deferment would have to be fully justified. So in this case, as I understand it, the reason would be to obtain the landscape visual impact assessment. That's one of the potential risks.
Councillor Barnes.
By delaying this...
Can you speak into the microphone, please, Councillor?
By delaying this, Mr Chairman, Justice delays it for no particular reason, because if it goes to appeal, I'm sure they'll win the appeal. So I think it's just a bit of a waste of time. I think we should make the decision tonight. It's been on the agenda quite a long while. The office have done a tremendous amount of work on it. I don't see by coming at this late stage with this sort of recommendation would make any difference. Thank you.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you on that. So, Councillor Barnfather, you have put forward a motion that this should be adjourned to what would be the 25th of February, and the vote...
If I may clarify, Chair, I'm not specifying a date. I'm saying that it should be deferred until we have the landscape visual impact assessment available before us to be able to consider in line with the rest of the paperwork that we have, whenever that may be.
Well, that's the earliest date that's possible, and obviously we want to get this settled as soon as possible, because, as Sarah said, there could be implications if this application is held up unduly or unnecessarily. So basically, it's a matter of it being deferred or being debated and decided on tonight. So all those in favour of your motion have to be quite clear that they prefer this to be deferred, and those who vote against say, no, we want it debated tonight. Is that the correct situation? Okay. So all those in favour of Councillor Barnfather's motion, please show. All those against, please show. Okay. And abstentions?
Chair, I'm not abstaining, I'm not voting because I haven't been present for
Yes,
the
that's
discussion.
understood. That's understood, Councillor. Well, is everybody content that I put this to the vote on the application? So you've got the application on page 26, which is a land of Grangeview, Gedling, erection of 24 houses, associated parking and access road, and the recommendation is on page 35, which is to grant planning permission subject to the owner entering into planning obligations secured through section 106 agreements, etc., etc.
And including the additional condition that the planning officer set out in his presentation.
Excuse me a moment.
I think you need to also say to include the condition that the planning officer set out in the presentation as well, because he included the additional condition in his
Yes, of course. This is also to include the conditions that the Principal Planning Officer, Nigel Bryan, set out during his presentation. Sorry?
Sorry, Chair. I'm sort of conscious of the fact there hasn't been a debate on the substantive application as such. I'm not sure that I necessarily have anything to say myself, but I believe
I'm
others
sure,
may.
actually, I'm just going on the recommendation of the legal officer here.
Sorry. I think they can if they wish to. If they wish to debate the application.
Sorry, I have alternative advice here that yes, let's have a debate on this item on the agenda. I'm sorry about that, a bit of confusion there. But anyway, I won't repeat what the application is because I've repeated, I've said it twice already. So anybody like to open the debate? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a couple of questions. The upper hedge line that's at the far side of the development site, and there's a hedgerow to the, if you're looking towards Colliery Way on the left-hand side as well, can we confirm that all that will be destroyed during the construction, please? And also what plans are in place to mitigate the flooding from a what will be a significantly raised area, concreted over. Thank you.
The hedgerow, the hedgerow is indicated as being retained around the edge of the site. And in terms of the flooding, well, drainage, better word, they're going to have holding tanks within, I think it's within the road, I can't remember the road or the public open space. But in effect, there's going to be controlled, the surface water is going to drain into the holding tanks, then into the existing network within Grangeview Road, and that's going to discharge at the controlled rate of 5 litres per second, which has been reviewed by the Lead Flood Authority, etc., and they're content with that. And obviously the file is going to link into the existing as well, so really it's going to link into the existing network in Grangeview Road.
In addition to Mr Bryan's comments, condition 17, you'll note, we're seeking specific details of means by which the site will be drained during the construction phase, given that it's at a high level.
Anyone else like to, Councillor Elwood?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's disappointing that the deferment couldn't take place, but looking at those images there, it really is quite noticeable how specifically the proposed houses, the 7 houses to the south of the site, how they are really overlooking the existing houses on that site. I think it's the next road along, as well as Grange View, that will be affected, I imagine. It just is so overbearing, I would imagine, for those existing residents. It would look incongruous, to my mind. I think with maybe a little bit more imagination, something slightly different could have been proposed. As say, Councillor Barnfather's suggestion of bungalows would have been something that could have been considered maybe. So, yeah, I do have concerns about the way this has been set out. And as we say, we accept that the principle of residential use is now accepted for the site, but I do have major concerns about the way it's been laid out. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to come back to something that Councillor Paling touched on when we were considering the deferment, and that's the lines of sight from the properties to be constructed to the existing properties. To me, it seems that arguably the fact that the difference in height of the sites is so different actually perhaps improves the position, because the line of sight to the existing properties is more difficult than perhaps it would be if they were lower down. We have to accept that the Gedling is a hilly borough. There are houses all across the borough where there is big difference in height. This certainly is in my ward. There's in your ward, Councillor Elwood, as I'm sure you're aware. So it's not something that's unusual for the borough of Gedling. As has already been said by others, the principle of development on this site has been established, and I think I'm happy with what is proposed.
Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's quite a decent-sized development. I mean, if you're going to put bungalows on, they're going to put the price of the property up. I mean, people are struggling to buy property as it is at the moment, and the way things are going, it's going to be more difficult. So I think to start and say, change the design and everything, but you're not going to get people to buy where these probably will sell, because it's quite pleasant down there now. Now we've got the relief road. It's quite easy access, and I think it'll be a very, very nice development down there. And I think the planning officers have thought everything out, and I think they've made a very, very, very good job on it. I don't see any problem at all. I think it'll be a nice development, and I look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paling.
If I were a developer, I would be most reluctant to put bungalows that far up Grangeview Road. They are less likely to sell. I mean, and the market for bungalows is not solely, but largely are older people, and getting down the hill will be more difficult. I think market value of bungalows would be low up there.
Good point, but not a relevant planning consideration.
A reason why I would not stop the development in order to persuade them to build bungalows.
Anyone else like to add to the discussion? Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I made my points when I asked for the deferment, and I'm one of those older people that actually, irrelevant as it may be, one of those older people who lives in a bungalow. But I've actually lived there for 45 years. I wasn't quite so old when I moved in. There is a market for bungalows. Can I say we sell them hand over fist in Ravenshead? There's a massive demand for them, but that's not the issue here. I repeat what I said earlier. I do not think that we have sufficient information to make that decision today. I believe that these properties are overbearing and impactful on the quality of life of the residents of the existing properties, and for that reason, I can't support the application as it is.
Thank you. I mean, I would like to agree with Councillor Wilkinson on this one about the topography of Gedling, and as he well knows, because I live in Porchester Garden Estate, and the roads there are precipitous, and everybody is overlooking at each other in even a greater extent than they are in this particular development. It's just, as Councillor Wilkinson said, something we have to live in Gedling. Anyway, does anybody else like to contribute to this before we to put it to the vote? Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Yes, thank you. I mean, overall, as a development, it is a proper development. I think my concern is that the developers were asked for this report. It was not produced, and therefore we're going ahead without it. And I think there's a precedent there that concerns me. That being said, we've decided we are going ahead to make a determination on this application, but I just wanted it to be noted. Thank you.
Okay, well, we just have to consider the application on what we've got in front of us. Okay, we put it to the vote. Recommendation on page 35, grant planning permission subject to the owner entering into planning obligations signed through the Section 106 agreement, and the other conditions. Which one is that? Expected for protected species survey.
For the ash tree to be removed.
In respect of possible bat roosts for the ash tree. Okay. So that's the alternative, that's the extra condition. Could I see all those in favour of that application, please show, please. And against. And abstentions. Thank you very much. That development has been approved, and I'm sorry for the confusion during the course of that particular item on the agenda. So we move on to item 5. Application number 2022/0798, the total site Road 3 Colic, which you'll find on page 44 of your agenda papers. Proposal is a full planning application for the erection of a building for use as a builder's merchant, sui generis, with trade counters and ancillary kitchen, etc., etc., etc. We do have a speaker on this, who is Mark Garrity, who is the applicant. If you'd like to address the committee, please, Mark. I'm sorry for the delay of this coming to this item.
Good evening. My name is Mark Garrity, and I'm representing the applicant Chancerygate. Chancerygate is a national developer specialising in the industrial market. We've been operating for more than 25 years and have 4 offices throughout the country. On average, we speculatively speculatively build approximately 100,000 square metres per year of industrial space. As such, we have considerable experience and expertise to bring forward this development, which will provide important new employment opportunities within the borough. As your officer has already set out, the site being considered today will regenerate and renew a redundant parcel of land within an industrial area. The proposed development will deliver 13 industrial and logistics units, including 6 trade counters and a builder's merchant intended to be occupied by Travis Perkins. Overall, a total of 9,377 square metres of new floor space is proposed across the site. The proposed development includes a range of unit sizes and types which we consider reflect the market demand for industrial units in the area. All of the units will benefit from electric vehicle charging points and further passive provision throughout. Cycle storage is provided across the site and PV panels are also proposed. We have worked closely with your officers at both pre-application and application stages to deliver a scheme which is of high quality, in keeping with the character of the surrounding industrial area, is sustainable and which will meet modern-day occupier requirements. The scheme will deliver a number of benefits, including redevelopment of previously developed land within a sustainable, protected employment area and the provision of new employment opportunities to benefit the local economy. The proposed development is therefore considered to be fully compliant with all the relevant planning policy, and therefore we encourage members to support the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. Nigel, would you like to say a few words on this application for us, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just by way of update in respect to the hazardous substance consent, to this end, I draw your attention to paragraph 6.27 of the report on page 50. It's now considered the hazardous substance consent has not automatically been revoked in accordance with the statutory provisions set out in the report. This is on the basis that, in this case, the whole site's ownership has been transferred, and the Act references revocation where there's been a change in the person in control of part of the land to which the consent relates. Nevertheless, 6.28 to 6.29 of the report that follow are still pertinent. There is considered to be no public safety risk in relation to hazardous substances in connection with this site, and the Council as a local planning authority will be able to control any such development in future. The recommendation to grant permission remains unchanged. In addition, the Health and Safety Executive have confirmed that should members be minded to grant permission, they would not request that the application be called in for determination by the Secretary of State. The HSE would not wish to pursue the matter further. Just by way of update, here's the application site. You'll more so recognise it, I think, from this picture, where it used to be home to the total site, how it has been fully cleared. The proposal to erect 13 industrial buildings and a builder's merchants, which would equate to some 9,377 square metres. This is the builder's merchants that's proposed to be erected in this location, and this is the range of the 13 industrial units here. The principle of development is supported in that the site falls on land allocated for industrial development and is supported by policy LPD 44. Additional landscaping is proposed along the boundary with Collet Loop Road in this location, and they've also got the agreement with the County Council to put some in the highway verge as well under County Council land. Adequate parking will be provided to service the units, and a transport assessment has been carried out with the Highway Authority, confirm the local road network can withstand the additional increase in traffic. The scale of built form is appropriate so as to respect the character of the area, and given the site's location, there'll be no detrimental impact on residential amenity. And as noted previously, there's no overriding concern in respect of the hazardous substance consent, and that the use has ceased, and this development will replace the former use, and any alternative applications would require permission in their own right. There will be significant benefits to the wider economy through employment, and a local labour agreement has been submitted in support of the application. I'll just run through some of the drawings. These show just some of the industrial units that would be erected. And this would be the builders' merchants. and that is just one of the smaller units within the site. And this is just like a 3D type model that shows how it would look. That would be in the site entrance. And this is the view that you would see from the Collick Loop Road. But weighing things in the round, we recommend the application for approval as outlined on pages 52 to 58 of the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Nigel. So there we have it. The proposal is for planning application, erection of buildings, use of builders, merchants, etc., etc. Would anybody like to move that up?
I have pleasure in moving it and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anybody like to second it? Thank you very much. Okay, who would like to open the debate on this? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, welcome the application. Welcome the news that there's going to be EV installed on some of the properties within there. The fact that it's going to be, it looks like a decent lining of vegetation around the site as well. And also the cycling and the EV side of things, happy to hear all that. Also incredibly happy to see us using an industrial site to put industrial things on and build on. Existing grey space brownfield sites is always a positive, and welcome in this area, specifically in our industrial zone. I do have a small question around the EV. Is the EV, what sort of volume of EV are we talking, and are we actually saying that this is going to in some way power the site, or are we exporting it directly? Is it going to batteries? What is the use of it? And also, what was the other thing I was going to ask as well? Will there be any sort of cycling paths put into the units, or will we just be dealing with the highway itself for the bikes? I'm aware it sort of leads off an A road, so I just wonder what the plan is for that too. Thanks.
Councillor Lawrence, would you like to make your contributions while they're just searching for a response to Councillor Adams?
Yes, thank you. Well, as I said, I've got pleasure in moving this application. It is in my ward, and the area has been vacant for some time, and anything that brings jobs into the area, and also hopefully local jobs. I obviously noted that negotiations will take place for a local labour agreement. I note also that it is across the road from another builder's merchant, the actual builder's merchant, and it's good that the area can sustain, because obviously the applicant would have done due diligence. It's good that the area will sustain two builders merchants in tandem and give people choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
So just in relation to the total number of EV charging points, condition 4 requires EV charging points to be provided in accordance with a drawing number which is specified in the condition. We're unable to provide that clarification. The only way we could provide that clarification would be to refer to that plan and actually count up the number of spaces, and then we could provide that update. A further 18 are proposed in addition to those shown on the plan. So there's a significant number of EV charging points that are proposed in this development, but we're unable to determine the correct number without counting them off a plan.
Certainly.
Thank you. Just to clarify as well, the applicant mentioned PV also, I believe. Is that right, or did I mishear?
I'm unable to confirm what the applicant has said. At the discretion of the chairman, the applicant could clarify what they'd said.
Can you make such clarification? Would you like to take the stand?
Yes, there are PVs on some of the buildings. I can't remember the exact number, if I'm totally honest, but we do put PV provision on all our estates, and this is the same. So, yeah, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the exact number that's on the building.
Do you know if they're connected to batteries as well, or is it purely from a...
No.
Councillor Adams, you're not allowed to question.
Anything else?
You can answer.
Oh, okay.
Now that the question has been asked...
No, there won't be battery storage in terms of being able to provide power that way, like you can do in residential, etc., or people do. But there are PVs to help generate and power, but it needs to be used there, and then it won't be stored in batteries.
Thank you very much, and thank you for my answer.
Do you know what the total number of EV points are?
In terms of the car charging, what we tend to do, I'm not sure on the larger building, but on all the smaller buildings, we put a standard of 2 electric charging points on each unit. I don't know off the top of my head whether there's more than 2 on the larger building in the bottom corner, but there will be a minimum of 2 on each. So it would be sort of 26, I'm guessing, is the number. That would be our standard provision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No. Any more contributions, questions? Councillor Barnes?
Yes, I think this is a very useful development in that part of the borough. I mean, the big companies are disappearing, so we need these sort of companies to start up and become big companies, because if we don't start and find jobs for the small entrepreneur, we're not going to keep the economy going. So I think this is a right direction to travel, where we've got to give people the opportunity to start the business off, and by building this sort of units is going to help to provide those sort of jobs in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more contributions? Okay. If we could go to the, if you're quite happy that we go to the vote. You find that on page 52 of your agenda papers, which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed below. Can I see all those in favour of that application? What?
Was it moved and seconded? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And those against? And abstentions? Okay, thank you. That application has been passed. Right, as item 6 has been withdrawn, we move straight on to item 7. Street record, Vale Road, Colic, on page 67. 68. Install a 10-metre column, concrete base and steel cabinet for a CCTV camera. All those in favour, please show. And against, thank you very much. Next item is on page 73, another street record, call it Roop Road. Recommendation is on page 77.
Move it.
Those in favour, please show. Thank you. And sorry, did we have a move? Did we have a seconder there? Yeah, okay. And Next, we go on to the item 9 on the agenda, which is the infrastructure funding statement, which you'll find on page 79. And the recommendation there is that the Planning Committee notes the contents of the report and notes the publication of the infrastructure funding statement for 2021-22 as detailed in Appendix A. That been moved? Anybody want to move that? And second, all those in favour of noting the contents, please show. And against, and abstentions. Okay, move on to the next item, which is the Authority Monitoring Report 21-22. Recommendations of Planning Committee. Could somebody like to move that authority report and second it? Thank you. The recommendation as the Planning Committee notes the report. All those in favour, please show.
Chair,
yes?
Sorry, could I say something? No, this is very useful information and is useful as a tool, in your words, to cut out and keep. It's interesting to see some of the ramifications of the COVID, the pandemic, looking at things like the train travel in 2020, for instance, which reduced horrendously. So it'd be interesting to see when we get the next one, or when you get or when the council has the next one, whether train travel has in fact increased. I mean, you know, given that in 1920 it was 15,000 at Burton Joyce, 57 at Carlton, so on and so forth. The Burton Joyce went down to 1,000, Carlton went down to 12,000. So, as I say, it'd be interesting.
Sorry, I would remind you, Councillor, that you know, this is here for noting, not debating. I agree with you.
No, it's an observation. I'm not debating.
Yeah.
I think people need to realise how much useful information there is, not just for the council.
Yes, I agree with you. All three of these reports are, as you so rightly point out, what I said before, for those of us lucky to have paper versions of the agenda, that we do have these cut out and keep. And certainly I will be cutting, even though I've only got a few months of left on the planning committee, I certainly intend to cut out and keep these for future reference. Okay,
I'll just make a similar comment. I made it at the pre-agenda meeting last week. I find it very useful, but I've also found that I can mark very interesting sections and make a note of where they are on my, particularly on my own machine at home, which is a laptop, and I can see the highlight and call them up on a search version. So it's very useful, whichever method you have of storing the document. And I do recommend it to the public. It's full of lots of information.
absolutely. I prefer shoving it in the filing cabinet and slamming the door shut. Have we got any more to get through? Did we do the street record? No, where are we? HMOs, another report on HMOs. I think hopefully the final one. Anybody like to move that report? And second, thank you. All those in favour of that we note it. Thank you very much. And against and abstentions, thank you very much. That report is duly noted. Then we go on to future planning applications on page 229 for noting. And future planning applications, I think I did that in the wrong order. It seems to be so long since we had a planning committee, I've forgotten how to run one. Future planning applications, page 229, delegation panel action sheets 231 to 243. Any other items the chair considers urgent? I don't have any other items. So I will just bid you all good night and wish you a very safe journey home and wish you all a happy new year.